Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where we educate, enlighten, and entertain. I want to thank Jeannie White for producing the show, writing the blog, and for Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio. Folks, you're going to want to listen to this podcast. Have you ever opened up your hospital bill and fall of your chair because you were surprised about some surprise bills on there that maybe you weren't inspecting or I should say expecting, or maybe you think you were charged incorrectly? Maybe you were charged for a test and you didn't receive it, or a doctor's visit. You're going to want to hear my expert guest today. Les Masterson is managing editor and expert spokesperson on health insurance for Insure.com. Welcome, Les.
Hi, Betsy. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing? I'm so happy to have you on.
Yeah, doing well.
Les, please tell us about the survey. Blew my mind. Can you talk about the survey and tell about your company and how do people avoid surprise medical bills, and what can they do about it when they receive it?
Sure. Yeah. So Insure.com, we have a website. We cover health insurance, car insurance, home insurance, and life insurance. And so we did a survey in October, and we asked 1,000 people about have they ever received a surprise medical bill. And we found about a third, 32%, said yes, they've received a medical bill they didn't expect. And that could be a larger than expected. That's usually the case, larger than expected. They knew they'd get a medical bill because they went to get healthcare services, but they didn't expect to have to pay as much. So we found that 32% said yes, they've received that. And we found the most common times they get billed more than they expect is physician services, hospitals, and lab tests. We found those are the three. Almost half of the people who said they got that, they've gotten those bills, surprise medical bills, those are the three areas that they nearly half said they received those. So it's something that is similar to, we did a similar survey last year too, and we found pretty much the same type thing, about a third. And it's always, hospital and physician services lead the way for what people are surprised getting a medical bill that they didn't expect, one that large. And we also asked them how much did they was the largest surprise medical bill they ever got. And we found that almost a quarter of those people said more than $2,000, which if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's kind of hard to scramble and find money like that to pay for a bill you didn't expect.
Absolutely.
With all your other issues. Yeah.
Yes, matter of fact, one reason why I really relate to your survey is earlier this year, I went for a stress test in my cardiologist office, but he's associated that group with the hospital. And I did fall off my chair, over $3,000 for a stress test.
Wow.
I was like... Yeah, I had to grab my inhaler. I have an asthma attack. I couldn't believe it.
So often it's not the patient's fault at all. They have done everything correctly, but because the healthcare system the way it is, sometimes things happen within the system that where they get a bigger bill than expected, even though they've done everything correctly. So you might have something like an out of network hospital visit. Where you're on vacation and you have to go to a hospital. It's not anything, major, but it's something that you're out of your network. That hospital doesn't accept that insurance, so there's no contract with the insurer, and you get nailed later with a bill. So that you have those type of situations. You've got, and the one that is really difficult for people is when you go to a hospital, that's in network, your insurer says it's in network, you go there, and at some point during your hospitalization, a provider who doesn't have a contract with your insurer treats you, and that's pretty common. Even though the hospital has a contract with the insurer, you could have people who are contract workers at a hospital who aren't employed by the hospital who don't have a contract. I mean, hopefully this is making sense. Don't have a contract with the insurer. So at that point, it's considered out-of-network care. That part of your care is considered out-of-network because there's no contract with the provider who's helping you in some way and the insurer. And that's something that is an issue, especially for like emergency care, because there's different companies who have physicians who fill in if there's a shortage somewhere for emergency care. They might have a physician fill in for a couple days or a week or whatever. So that person's not employed by the hospital, might not have any contracts with a lot of insurers, but they see you, and then it's considered out-of-network care because that provider is considered out-of-network because he or she doesn't have a contract with the insurer. And that's one of the things that it's nothing. If you go into an emergency room, you're going to not worry about, is this person who's looking after me out-of-network or not. You're just, if you're in the emergency room, you're worried about your health, and so it's a difficult situation. There's been legislation in some states to help people out in that situation, but it can be a loophole in healthcare.
Yes, and if you're in the hospital, also, Les, I mean, who has their contract in front of them, and a doctor comes in because you have a problem, medical problem, you may not think to ask, are you in my plan? What your insurance company will say was, well, you should have called before they came into the room. I mean, I've had that said to me, actually, when I was in the hospital.
One situation, too, is with ambulance transport. So many ambulances don't have contracts with insurers, and it's especially a problem if you need to be med-flighted somewhere. I've seen studies that has well under half of med flights are covered by insurance, so people can get nailed with like a $20,000, $30,000 bill for a med flight.
Wow.
That's out of their control, because if you're being med flighted, you're in serious trouble. So that's a major problem also.
Wow. I always wondered about the expense of a med flight, now that you've mentioned it.
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, it's not covered by a lot of insurers. So people can, that's not just, I'm looking here at my information here. The average air ambulance transport is $36,000. But and if you don't have, if there's no contract with your insurer, that is coming out of your pocket. So.
Wow. Well, I know when my husband had to be transported last year, and he was under hospice, just to drive 3 miles. No, medical equipment was necessary, just to take him up the stairs into the ambulance, into the hospice unit, was over $1,700. I mean, hospice paid for that, but I couldn't believe it was that much for 3 miles. I would have driven in there myself if I could have. Yeah. So it's really expensive. What do you suggest to people when they receive these surprises?
Yeah, the first thing is to check with your provider, check with your physician's office to get more information about it. It could have been an error on their part. That's also something that's fairly common, is there's an error in the system that the person who entered the information into the computer, the code, might have put the wrong code in. And that can have long-lasting issues throughout the system. If you have that first thing wrong, it could wind up, it won't be caught on the other end, and a bill would come out possibly for a service that you didn't get. So that's one issue. So check with your provider. make sure that the information was correct in the system, so that you weren't charged with something that you did not, not a service that you had. You can also talk to them about there's different payment options a lot of times, where, especially for a hospital in a healthcare system, might have a payment plan, or they might even agree to take less money. Medicare pays less than to providers than private insurance. So if you have a private insurance and you get hit with a bill, you could see if the provider would take the Medicare payment, that level, because it is less money. You could do that. Ask them that if that's possible. Also check with the insurance company and talk to them about that. Also, they might be willing to knock some money off of your bill. You can also appeal with the insurance company, and at that point, they usually give you 2 or 3 appeal opportunities for a bill. So if you get something and you think that you're being charged too much, or the service that you did not get, you could go to appeal it to the insurance company, give all the information about why you shouldn't be charged that amount, and they will usually get back to you within a month to 45 days on whether they agree with it or not. And like I said, usually you have like 2 or 3 chances. So if you get denied for one appeal, you could appeal a second time, and they could even allow an independent review of it. So it's not the company that's reviewing it. They might have someone else that outside of the company who will review it and give the okay or not on whether to waive the information or to lower it or what have you. So those are 2 things you can do. With something like emergency care, that's even more complicated, because, like I said, you might have physicians filling in from outside the system, look after you while you're hospitalized. So that's something you want to go through the same system, the same way of doing things. You can appeal it with the hospital, with the insurer, and see if they'll be willing to knock some money down, or waive the information, or waive the money if it's something that's an error. And once you go through those, the provider and insurer, you can also go to your state. Your state has an insurance department who they have people on staff whose job is pretty much all to just help people out, help consumers who have bills from medical providers they didn't expect, or higher than they expected, and they can help you out and show you what your options are left. And maybe, if it's bad enough, they might even investigate it themselves. So those are all avenues if you get a bill that is higher than you expected.
Well, thank you, Les. Thanks for the information. I know from my own experience, when that stress test was over $3,000, I called the hospital billing department. I said, I can't afford this. I'm out of work. And they lowered it, and then I said, can you lower it or waive it? And they did. Thank God.
Yeah.
They waived it. Also, Les, you brought out a good point. When you're in the hospital, you have no control over what doctors see you. Mm-hmm. So some insurance companies will allow a doctor out of network and pay it as in network, because at that point you don't have a choice. You're in the hospital, and whoever comes through comes through. I did have that with my old insurance company, but with the one I have now, who knows? This one,
it's always good to appeal, and the insurers are used to this kind of thing. It's not like they're gonna put a mark against you if you appeal something. They have people in their company whose job is just to to review that kind of stuff. So if you feel like you would charge more than expected, or like you said, if it's something you just can't afford this, check with the insurer, check with the provider, and they could very well write it off. Hospitals especially are known to do that at times, that they'll write off care and just not, just write it off until you don't have to worry about that. And also steps to take before you even get care. Make sure if it's something that's not an emergency, check to make sure that any provider you go to is considered in network. If you have an HMO and you go to a provider outside of your network, you could end up have to pay the whole bill, because they have much more restricted networks than a PPO. A PPO plan is one that has a much wider network, and if you get care at a provider who's considered out of network, then you have to pay more, but at least they'll pick up a portion of it. So the first step is to make sure that any provider you see, like I said, if it's not an emergency, make sure you check that any provider and any hospital you go to is considered in network, and don't just rely on the provider directory or that you might find online. There have been different studies that have shown that there's a lot of mistakes in those things. That they might have a doctor on their network plan on their website that hasn't taken it for a couple of years, but they haven't been removed from that list. So it's a good idea to check directly with the provider to make sure that they take your specific plan, so that you won't later get billed with an out-of-network charge.
Absolutely. And if you have insurance like mine where it's Tier 1, Tier 2, yes, they're in network, but you're going to pay more than if they are in Tier 1. So check that out. And always call your insurance and make sure, or look online with your insurance company, make sure that provider is in network. I want to thank you, Les, for coming on. How can people get in touch with insure.com?
You can just go to the web. It's just www.insure.com, and you can find all of the information on there. Like I said, we cover health, auto, home, and life insurance. So you can check out all of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Les. I appreciate you coming on. So check out insure.com, see what they have to offer. Maybe they're cheaper than what you have now. You don't know until you check it out. I want to thank everyone for listening. If you missed any of this podcast, you can hear it wherever podcasts are heard. I am now on Amazon.com. And to thank you again, Les, for coming on. Thank you, Insure.com, for what you do. And have a happy holiday, everybody. Be safe. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy and Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.